The colony of New Bremen sat on the edge of human space like a small jewel in the darkness. 4,000 people called this world home. They lived in clear domes that covered fields of wheat and corn. Children played in parks where earth flowers grew under alien suns. It was a peaceful place, far from the busy worlds near Earth. Sarah Chen was 8 years old. She had dark hair tied in 2 braids and a stuffed rabbit she carried everywhere. The rabbit's name was Mr. Hops, and he was gray with one ear that flopped down. Sarah loved the colony gardens most of all. She would run between the rows of tomato plants with her friends, laughing as they played hide-and-seek. Her father worked in the water treatment center. Her mother taught at the colony school. They had come to New Bremen 5 years ago, looking for a quiet life. They had found it. Every evening, the family would eat dinner together and watch the sunset through the dome. The sky here turned purple and orange, not like Earth's red and gold. Humanity had been part of the Galactic Council for 200 years. It was a time of peace. Dozens of alien species traded and talked and lived together. There were the tall blue-skinned Astari who loved music, the small furry Pixen who were brilliant engineers, the wise elders of Proxima who settled disputes, and many more humans were respected but not feared. They were known as good neighbors. They built things. They shared their art and food. The old days of war were long forgotten. Earth's great warship sat silent in the darkness of the Oort cloud, at the very edge of the solar system. No one talked about them anymore. They were relics from a violent past that everyone wanted to forget. But peace is a fragile thing. The Vrix dominion had been expanding for decades. They were a reptilian species, tall and covered in red and black scales. Their empire stretched across 70 star systems. They were proud and strong, and they believed they had the right to take what they wanted. The Vrix wanted the territory where New Bremen sat. They said it was theirs by ancient claim. The Galactic Council held meetings. Diplomats spoke in careful words. The Vrix made demands. Humanity asked for patience and negotiation. Then the Vrix sent a fleet. Colony Administrator Marcus Webb received the warning from Earth. His screen showed the message in bright red letters. A Vrix battle group was coming. 12 warships. He was ordered to evacuate immediately. But the Vrix commander had sent a message too. It said the colonists would have safe passage. It said this was just a territorial transfer. It said no one would be harmed if they cooperated. Webb called a meeting. The colonists gathered in the main hall. Some wanted to leave immediately. Others said they had built this place with their own hands and they would not abandon it. The Vrix had promised safety. The council was watching. Surely nothing bad would happen. They decided to stay and negotiate. Sarah Chen did not understand politics. She only knew that the adults seemed worried. Her father's face was tight when he came home from work. Her mother held her closer at bedtime. But Sarah still played in the gardens. She still went to school. She still talked to Mr. Hops when she was scared. The Vrix ships arrived on a Tuesday morning. They were huge and dark, shaped like blades. They moved into orbit around the colony world. Administrator Webb sent messages of greeting. He prepared documents for the transfer talks. He believed in the process. He believed in civilization. The Vrix commander's name was Skrull. He was old for his species, with scars across his face that spoke of many battles. He looked at the human colony below and felt nothing but contempt. These soft creatures with their farms and schools. They did not deserve this world. Skrull gave the order. The first plasma lance struck the northern dome at 9:47 a.m. local time. The dome shattered like glass. Air rushed out into the thin atmosphere. Hundreds died in seconds. The Vrix ships fired again and again. Domes exploded. Buildings burned. The people of New Bremen ran, but there was nowhere to go. Sarah Chen was in the garden when it happened. She heard the thunder of explosions. She saw the sky crack open above her. Her teacher screamed for everyone to run. Sarah clutched Mr. Hops and ran toward the shelter, but she was small and the crowd was pushing. Fire rolled across the garden like a wave. Administrator Webb sent one last message before the communication center was destroyed. It was only 2 words, transmitted toward Earth at the speed of light. 2 words that would take 3 weeks to arrive. They're killing us. The attack lasted 17 minutes. When it was over, New Bremen was gone. 4,000 people were dead. The Vrix ships moved on to claim the planet. They did not bother to check for survivors. There were none. Sarah Chen died holding her stuffed rabbit in the burning remains of the place she had called home. She was 8 years old. She had liked drawing pictures and playing in the garden. She had wanted to be a doctor when she grew up. Her name was Sarah Chen, and she would not be forgotten. 3 weeks later, her death would wake something that had slept for 200 years. 3 weeks later, the galaxy would remember why humanity had locked away its warships. 3 weeks later, the Vrix Dominion would learn that some things should never be awakened. But on that Tuesday morning, there was only silence among the ruins. The purple and orange sunset came as it always did, but there was no one left to see it. The message arrived at Earth on a cold morning in March. It traveled at the speed of light for 3 weeks across the void of space. 2 words that changed everything. They're killing us. The Terran Federation government went silent for 6 hours. They needed to confirm it. They sent fast probe ships. They checked every sensor. But they already knew the truth. Everyone on Earth could feel it in their bones. Something terrible had happened. When the probe images came back, they showed only ruins, shattered domes, burned buildings, 4,000 bodies scattered across a dead colony. The government released the images to the public. They wanted everyone to see what had been done. Earth went into mourning. Billions of people watched the footage in silence. They saw the gardens where children had played. They saw the schools and homes. They saw what remained of Sarah Chen, 8 years old, still holding her stuffed rabbit. The Galactic Council called an emergency session. Representatives from 100 worlds gathered in the great meeting station above Proxima Centauri. They expressed shock. They offered condolences. They spoke about the tragedy in careful diplomatic language. The human ambassador stood and asked a simple question. "What will you do about this?" The council members looked at each other. The Vrix were powerful. They had allies. Starting a war over one colony could destabilize the entire galaxy. These things took time to resolve. There were processes, investigations, negotiations. The Astari delegate spoke in her musical voice. "We must not act in anger. We must think of the greater peace." The human ambassador's face was stone. A greater peace built on the bodies of children is no peace at all. But the council would not act. They were afraid. They talked of sanctions and investigations that would take years. They asked humanity to be patient, to be reasonable, to think of the bigger picture. Earth's president spoke to the world that evening. Her name was Michelle Torres, and she had held office for 6 years. She was a calm woman who believed in diplomacy, but when she appeared on screens across Earth, her eyes were different, harder. "The council has abandoned us," she said. "They ask us to wait while the murderers of our children walk free. They ask us to be patient while the Vrix claim their prize. I will not ask this of you. I will not accept this." She paused and looked directly into the camera. "We have been peaceful for 2 centuries. We have been good neighbors. We have tried to forget what we once were. But some things cannot be forgiven. Some lines cannot be crossed. Today, I am issuing emergency authorization under Article 7 of the Federation Charter. We are going to war." The word sent shockwaves across the galaxy. Humanity had not fought a war in 200 years. Most species thought they had grown soft. The Vrix commander who ordered the attack, Skrull, laughed when he heard the news. What could these farmers and artists do against the might of the Dominion? Admiral James Cutto was 73 years old. He had served in the Terran Navy for 50 years, but never in wartime. There had been no wars to fight. He had retired 5 years ago to a small house by the ocean, where he spent his days reading and fishing. They came for him at dawn. A government shuttle landed on his beach. President Torres herself was aboard. She looked tired, older than her years. She sat across from him and told him what she needed. "The fleet in the Oort cloud," she said. "Can you wake it?" Kodo stared at her. The Oort cloud fleet, the ghost ships from the Unification Wars. Everyone said they were too old to fly. The reactors had been cold for 2 centuries. The AIs were shut down. Most people had forgotten they even existed. "I don't know," he said honestly. "No one has tried. Will you try?" Kodo thought of Sarah Chen. He had seen her picture, a little girl with braids and a stuffed rabbit. He thought of all the other children who would die if the galaxy learned that killing humans had no consequences. "Yes," he said. The journey to the Oort cloud took 2 weeks. Kodo's ship was small and fast. He brought a crew of engineers, most of them old like him. People who remembered how things used to be built. People who understood the old technologies. The fleet waited in the darkness at the edge of the solar system. 847 warships arranged in perfect formation. They had been here so long that ice had formed on their hulls. They looked like ghost ships, dead things floating in the void. The flagship was called the TFNS Remembrance. It was 3 kilometers long, built like a fortress with armor plating half a meter thick. Its weapons had been designed for one purpose only: to destroy other warships as efficiently as possible. Kodo suited up and crossed to the Remembrance in a small pod. The airlock still worked. Inside, the corridors were dark and cold. His breath fogged in the air. He made his way to the bridge, his footsteps echoing in the silence. The command chair was covered in frost. Kodo brushed it off and sat down. The controls were old-fashioned, built in an age before neural interfaces. Physical switches and buttons, screens that would light up if there was power. He found the main communications panel. It was connected to the ship's quantum core, the artificial intelligence that ran all the ship's systems. If the core was dead, nothing would work. Kodo activated his suit radio so his crew could hear. He thought about what to say. Some grand speech maybe, some call to duty. But in the end, he only thought of a little girl he had never met. He pressed the activation button and spoke 3 words. For Sarah Chen. For a long moment, nothing happened. The bridge stayed dark. Kodo closed his eyes. It had been a foolish hope. 200 years was too long. Then a light flickered on the main console. Then another. The screens began to glow with soft blue light. He heard a sound he never thought he would hear again. The deep thrum of a fusion reactor coming online. The AI's voice filled the bridge. It was calm and clear, unchanged by 2 centuries of sleep. Admiral Koto, I have been waiting. What are your orders? Koto felt tears on his face. He looked out the window at the fleet, and one by one he saw lights beginning to shine. 847 warships waking up from a long sleep. Prepare for combat operations, he said quietly. We're going to war. Across the solar system, monitoring stations detected the power surge. Scientists stared at their screens in disbelief. Energy readings were spiking in the Oort cloud. Impossible amounts of power. The kind of power you needed to move mountains. The kind of power you needed to wage war. The forgotten fleet was awake, and it was angry. The Vrix Dominion received Earth's demands on a Thursday. The message was simple and direct. Surrender those responsible for the New Bremen massacre for trial. Pay reparations to the families. Acknowledge the crime before the Galactic Council. Commander Skrull read the message and destroyed the communication device. The idea that humans would dare make demands of the Dominion was insulting. They were weak. They had been peaceful for so long that they had forgotten how to fight. Let them cry to their useless council. Let them send angry messages. The Vrix feared nothing. The Dominion's High Command sent a reply. It consisted of a single word in the Vrix language. The translation was crude, but the meaning was clear. No. The Galactic Council tried to intervene. Ambassadors flew between Earth and Vrix space, begging both sides to step back from the edge. The Astari offered to mediate. The elders of Proxima warned that war would hurt everyone. Surely there was a diplomatic solution. President Torres met with the council delegation in Geneva. She listened to their pleas for 20 minutes without speaking. When they finished, she stood and walked to the window. Outside, protesters filled the streets, millions of people holding pictures of the New Bremen dead. You had your chance to prevent this, Torres said quietly. When Sarah Chen died, you did nothing. When 4,000 of my people were murdered, you offered thoughts and prayers. Now you ask me to stand down? No. We are done waiting for you to do the right thing. She turned back to the delegation. The fleet launches in 3 days. Tell the Vrix to prepare themselves. Admiral Kodo worked around the clock preparing the ancient warships. Engineers swarmed over every vessel, checking systems that had not been used in 2 centuries. To everyone's surprise, the ships were in perfect condition. The AIs had maintained them even in sleep mode, running diagnostics and self-repairs. The crew was another matter. Koto had sent out a call for volunteers. He expected a few thousand people maybe, retired military personnel, young people looking for adventure. Instead, 50,000 people showed up. More than he needed. More than he could take. They came from all over Earth. Factory workers, teachers, parents, students. All of them wanting to do something. Wanting to make the Vrix pay. Kodo had to turn away thousands. He chose the ones with military training first, then anyone with engineering or weapons experience. Many of the volunteers were old like him. Men and women who had served on these very ships during the Unification Wars. They walked the corridors and remembered. Some cried. These ships had seen terrible things, they had done terrible things. That was why they had been locked away. Lieutenant Jennifer Park was 26 years old. She had graduated from the Naval Academy 2 years ago and served on a patrol ship near Jupiter. Now she stood on the bridge of the Remembrance as a weapons officer. She was the youngest person on the bridge by 30 years. The veterans around her moved with quiet efficiency. They did not joke or talk much. They checked their stations with the careful attention of people who knew what was coming. She wanted to ask them what to expect, but something in their faces stopped her. Instead, she asked Admiral Koto during a break. "Sir, were you at the Unification Wars?" Koto looked at her for a long moment. "Yes, I was 19. I served on the destroyer Hammer of Justice." "What was it like?" "Like nothing you want to see again." The Unification Wars had happened 250 years ago. Humanity had just developed faster than light travel. The various nations and colonies of Earth fought each other for control of the new territories. It was brutal. Ships destroyed other ships without mercy. Colonies were bombarded from orbit. Millions died. The warships of that era were designed for total war, not the careful, limited conflicts the modern galaxy engaged in. These were weapons made to crush enemies completely. When the wars finally ended and Earth unified, the survivors looked at what they had built and were horrified. They locked the ships away and promised never to use them again. For 200 years that promise had held. Lieutenant Park worked at her console, running checks on the weapons systems. Missiles, railguns, plasma cannons, fusion torpedoes. All of it old technology, but still deadly. She noticed something odd in the specifications. "Sir, these weapons, they're designed to penetrate heavy armor and destroy ship cores in one shot. That's not how modern combat works." Kodo nodded. "Modern combat is about disabling ships, forcing surrender, minimizing casualties." He paused. "These weapons were designed before we learned those lessons. They were designed to kill." Park felt a chill run down her spine. The fleet launched on schedule, 847 warships moving together, forming a formation that stretched 1,000 kilometers across. They accelerated slowly at first, building speed as they moved away from the Oort cloud toward inner space. People on Earth and Mars and the colony stations watched them pass. The ships were dark gray, almost black, with no decorations or colors. They looked like exactly what they were, weapons of war from a darker time. It took 3 weeks to cross Vrix territory. The fleet did not ask for permission to enter. They simply came, moving at 70% light speed, impossible to stop or turn aside. The Vrix watching stations detected them and sent warnings. The humans ignored every message. The Vrix High Command held an emergency meeting. Some argued they should negotiate, give the humans what they wanted, but Commander Skrull stood before the assembly and spoke with fire in his voice. "They are trying to intimidate us with old ships and empty threats. We are the Vrix Dominion. We have conquered 70 systems. We defeated the Ashen Empire and the Krell Confederation. Are we now to fear a race of farmers and merchants because they drag out some ancient relics?" He slammed his clawed hand on the table. "I say we destroy them. Show the galaxy what happens to those who challenge us. I will lead the 3rd Battle Fleet personally. We will meet them at the Kryn Nebula and send them running back to Earth." The High Command agreed. The Vrix 3rd Battle Fleet was legendary. 200 ships, including 5 heavy dreadnoughts. They had never lost a battle. They moved to intercept the human fleet with confidence. Aboard the Remembrance, Admiral Kodo received word that the Vrix fleet was approaching. He called his senior staff to the bridge. They gathered around the tactical display. looking at the red icons that represented enemy ships. "They outnumber our vanguard," one officer said. The human fleet had divided into 3 groups. The vanguard was only 60 ships. "Numbers aren't everything," Koto said quietly. He opened a ship-wide channel. "All hands, this is Admiral Koto. In 15 minutes we will engage the enemy. Some of you have never been in combat. Some of you remember it too well. I want you to know why we're here. We're here because a little girl named Sarah Chen died and the galaxy did nothing. We're here so that never happens again." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "What we're about to do is ugly. War is always ugly. But sometimes it's necessary. When this is over, we'll have to live with what we've done. But at least we'll have done something." Koto out. Lieutenant Park checked her weapons one last time. Her hands were shaking. Across from her, an old veteran named Chen gave her a small nod. No relation to Sarah, but he wore her name on his uniform anyway. They all did. The Vrix fleet came into range. Commander Skrull opened a communication channel. His reptilian face filled the screen, scales gleaming red and black. He smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Your ancient relics are no match for modern warships," he said in heavily accented human speech. "Turn back now and we may let you live." Admiral Koto did not respond. He simply closed the channel and gave the order that would change everything. All ships, fire at will. The Battle of Kryn Nebula began at 1437 Galactic Standard Time. It would last 14 minutes. Those 14 minutes would change how every species in the galaxy viewed humanity. Commander Skrull gave the order to fire. The Vrix fleet opened up with everything they had. Plasma lances shot across the void, bright blue beams that could cut through modern ship armor like paper. Quantum torpedoes streaked forward, leaving trails of distorted space behind them. Missile swarms launched, each weapon guided by sophisticated AI. It was a devastating barrage, enough firepower to destroy a planet's defenses. The Vrix had won battles with less. The human ships did not dodge. They did not use fancy electronic countermeasures or deploy defensive drones. They simply took the hits head-on. Plasma lances struck the Remembrance's hull and splashed off like water. The armor plating was 1/2 meter of composite steel and ceramic, designed in an age when ships fought at close range. Quantum torpedoes detonated against the shields, causing ripples of energy, but the ships barely slowed. On the Remembrance's bridge, Lieutenant Park watched her console in amazement. Damage reports were minimal. "Sir, their weapons are barely scratching us." Admiral Koto nodded grimly. "Modern warships are built light and fast. Elegant, our ships are built like fortresses." "There's nothing elegant about them." Commander Skrull stared at his tactical display in confusion. His weapons should have crippled several human ships by now. Instead, they just kept coming, plowing through his fire like it was nothing. A cold feeling began in his stomach. The human ships closed to optimal firing range. Admiral Koto's voice was calm and clear. "All batteries, open fire." The human fleet unleashed hell. The weapons that fired were not elegant. They were not sophisticated. They were brutal instruments designed for one purpose: total destruction. Railguns fired first. Massive electromagnetic accelerators launched solid slugs of depleted uranium at a fraction of the speed of light. Each slug massed several tons. When they hit, they went straight through modern ship armor like it wasn't there. A Vrix destroyer took a railgun slug through its midsection. The slug punched through both sides of the ship, leaving a hole 3 meters wide. The ship snapped in half, its reactor going critical. It exploded in a ball of white fire. Missiles came next. Not guided smart weapons, but simple kinetic kill missiles. Hundreds of them, cheap and effective. They didn't need to be fancy. They just needed to hit hard. They slammed into Vrix ships and detonated with shaped charges that cracked hulls open like eggs. Then came the fusion torpedoes. These were weapons that most modern species had banned because they were too terrible. Each torpedo carried a small fusion warhead that created a miniature sun for a few seconds. The heat could melt through anything. A fusion torpedo hit a Vrix heavy cruiser. The warhead detonated, and for 3 seconds the ship was engulfed in temperatures matching a star's core. When the light faded, there was nothing left but vapor and debris. The Vrix fleet tried to return fire, but they were designed to fight other modern ships. Fast, maneuverable combat. The humans just absorbed their attacks and kept shooting. It It was like trying to fight a landslide with a sword. Lieutenant Park's hands flew over her controls, designating targets. Her console showed enemy ships dying one after another. She had trained for combat, but nothing prepared her for this. It wasn't a battle. It was slaughter. Target destroyed, her AI reported in a neutral voice. Acquiring next target. Another Vrick ship exploded. Then another. Park felt sick but kept working. She thought of Sarah Chen and her stuffed rabbit and kept pulling the trigger. Commander Skrull's flagship rocked as a railgun slug passed close by, the shockwave slamming into his shields. Half his fleet was already gone. His communications were filled with screams and pleas for help. This was impossible. These were ancient ships, ancient weapons. This wasn't supposed to happen. He tried to order a retreat, but another railgun slug hit his ship's communication array. Then a missile punched through his port side. His ship was dying around him. Skrull's last thought before the fusion torpedo hit was that he had made a terrible mistake. Then there was only light. Across the galaxy, sensor stations were picking up the battle. At first, the scientists monitoring the feed thought their equipment was broken. The readings couldn't be right. But they were. On the Galactic Council station, delegates gathered around the main display in stunned silence. They watched the sensor logs replay the battle. 14 minutes from start to finish. The Vrick's third battle fleet had been completely destroyed. All 200 ships gone. A junior analyst from the Astari delegation ran calculations and looked up with wide eyes. The energy output from those weapons, it's orders of magnitude higher than anything we use. They're not trying to disable ships. They're trying to erase them. The senior delegates exchanged glances. They had all lived their whole lives in a galaxy where wars were rare and limited. When they did happen, they were careful affairs. Ships were disabled and captured. Crews were treated well. Casualties were minimized. The humans were fighting a different kind of war. An old kind, the kind their ancestors fought before civilization taught them better. The elder of Proxima, oldest and wisest of the council, spoke in his slow, deep voice. I remember now. I was young when humanity joined the council. I read their history. I thought I understood, but I did not. He looked at the display showing the debris field where the Vrick's fleet had been. We thought they had changed. We thought they had evolved past their violent nature. But they did not change. They only locked their violence away, hoping never to need it again. What do we do? The Astari delegate asked. Her musical voice was shaking. Nothing, the elder said. We do nothing. We wanted them to handle this themselves. Now we must live with how they choose to handle it. Aboard the Remembrance, Admiral Koto walked through the corridors after the battle. Crew members worked at their stations or stood in small groups. They were quiet. Even the young ones who had never seen combat before understood what they had done. He found Lieutenant Park sitting alone in a cargo bay, staring at nothing. Her face was pale. First battle is always hard, Koto said, sitting down next to her. I killed 17 ships, Park said. Each one had a crew. Hundreds of people. I pressed a button and they died. Yes. How do you live with it? Koto was quiet for a moment. You remember why you did it. You remember what they did to New Bremen. You remember that if we don't stop them, they'll do it again. And you accept that being a good person sometimes means doing terrible things. Park looked at him. Does it get easier? No, and if it does, that's when you need to worry. They sat in silence for a while. Then Koto stood and helped her to her feet. Come on. We're not done yet. Admiral Koto opened a communication channel to the Vrick's homeworld. The message was broadcast across all frequencies so everyone could hear it. His face appeared on screens across Vrick space and throughout the galaxy. I am Admiral James Koto of the Terran Federation. You have 72 hours to surrender your government for trial. You will pay reparations for the deaths at New Bremen. You will acknowledge your crime before the Galactic Council. Every hour you delay, another Vrick system goes dark. This is not a negotiation. This is a promise. He closed the channel. Around him, his crew waited for orders. Set course for the nearest Vrick's military installation. He said quietly, and may God forgive us for what we're about to do. The human fleet moved deeper into Vrick space, and behind them, they left only silence. The campaign lasted 6 weeks. The galaxy watched in horror as the human fleet moved through Vrick space like a scythe through wheat. Every 72 hours, when the Vricks refused to surrender, another military installation was destroyed. Orbital defense platforms, shipyards, fleet bases, all of them turned to debris and fire. Admiral Koto gave the same warning before each attack. He broadcast the location in advance. He gave time for non-military personnel to evacuate. Then he destroyed everything that was left. The Vrix kept refusing to surrender, convinced that their superior technology would eventually win. They kept being wrong. The fourth week, the Vrix sent their first battle fleet. It was their pride and joy. 300 ships, including 10 dreadnoughts, each one equipped with the latest weapons technology. They ambushed the human fleet near a gas giant in the Corvin system. The battle lasted 23 minutes. When it was over, the first battle fleet was gone. The human fleet lost 2 ships. Both were recovered and repaired. The Galactic Council held emergency sessions almost daily. They debated sanctions against Earth. They wrote strongly worded resolutions. They accomplished nothing. Several species threatened to send their own fleets to stop the humans, but when they ran simulations of how that would go, they quietly backed down. The Elder of Proxima finally called President Torres directly. His ancient face filled her screen lined with worry. "You must stop this," he said. "The Vrix are broken. You have made your point. Continuing will only create more suffering." Torres looked tired. She had not slept well in weeks. "Tell me, Elder, how many of your people have died in this war?" "None, thank the stars. 4,000 of mine died at New Bremen. Not in war. Not in battle. They died picking vegetables and teaching school. They died because the Vrix thought they could kill humans without consequences." She leaned forward. "The suffering you're worried about, it already happened. We're just making sure everyone understands it won't happen again. This level of violence is not civilized." "You're right. It's not. But neither is standing by while children are murdered." Torres's voice was hard. "The Council had a chance to be civilized. You chose peace over justice. We chose differently." The 6th week, the human fleet reached Vrix Prime, the homeworld of the Dominion. 60 billion Vrix lived there in cities that stretched across 5 continents. The fleet took up position in high orbit, weapons aimed at the military installations around the planet. Admiral Koto made one final broadcast. By now, every species in the galaxy was watching. Billions of beings tuned in to see what would happen next. "This is Admiral Koto. 72 hours from now, I will destroy every military asset in this system. Your fleet is gone. Your defenses are gone. You cannot win this fight." He paused. "I take no joy in this, but I will not stop until justice is served. You have 72 hours. Choose wisely." On Vrix Prime, the government finally broke. The High Command had been arguing for weeks. Some wanted to fight to the last. Others begged to negotiate. The loss of the first battle fleet had tipped the balance. They had nothing left to fight with. The supreme commander of the Vrix Dominion, an old female named Karthos, overruled all objections. She opened a channel to the human fleet. "We surrender," she said simply, "unconditionally. Tell us your terms." Koto did not smile. He did not feel victorious. He only felt tired. "You will hand over everyone involved in the New Bremen attack for trial. You will pay reparations to the families of the dead. You will acknowledge before the Galactic Council that you committed a war crime. You will never again enter human space without permission." "Agreed, all of it. Just stop." 3 days later, former Commander Skrull's subordinates were transferred to human custody. Skrull himself was dead, killed in the first battle. His second in command, a younger officer named Vrex, stood in chains before a human court. He did not look proud anymore. He looked broken. The trial lasted 2 weeks. The evidence was overwhelming. Vrex was found guilty of war crimes and crimes against sapient beings. He was sentenced to life imprisonment. 13 other Vrix officers received similar sentences. The galaxy watched every minute of the trial. Some species protested that it was Victor's justice, that the humans were being too harsh. Others said the punishment should have been death. Everyone had an opinion. The Galactic Council convened one final time to address the war. The Great Chamber was packed. Delegates from every member species came to hear what would be said. Admiral Koto was invited to speak. He stood before the council in his dress uniform, looking older than his 73 years. The war had aged him. He wondered if he would live long enough to retire again. "You asked me to address this body," he began. "I'm not a diplomat. I'm a soldier, so I'll speak plainly." He looked around at the delegates. 2 months ago, 4,000 humans were massacred. You offered thoughts and concerns. You wrote reports. You did nothing that mattered. You let them die because acting was inconvenient. There were murmurs of protest. Kodo raised his voice. You want to condemn us for excessive violence? Fine, condemn us. But understand this. We will not let that happen again. Ever. We will not wait for your councils and committees while our people die. We will not be peaceful victims while you debate what to do. He gestured at the display showing Earth. For 200 years we tried your way. We locked away our weapons. We believed in civilization and law and order. Sarah Chen believed in it too. She was 8 years old. She died anyway. The chamber was silent. We're staying in the council. We believe in what you're trying to build here. But we're not putting away our weapons again. The fleet stays active. If someone comes for us, we will defend ourselves with everything we have. That's not a threat. It's a promise. President Torres added Earth's official statement. The Terran Federation would remain a council member. They would honor all existing treaties, but they would maintain their military at full readiness. The age of peaceful, unarmed humanity was over. The vote was contentious, but ultimately the council accepted Earth's terms. They had no choice. No one wanted to fight the humans, not after seeing what they could do. The fleet returned to the Oort cloud 6 weeks later, but this time they did not power down. The ships remained active, ready to launch at any moment. Crews rotated regularly. Training exercises were conducted monthly. The Ghost Fleet would never sleep again. Admiral Kodo retired for the second time. He went back to his house by the ocean, but he didn't fish anymore. He just sat on his porch and watched the waves. Lieutenant Park visited him sometimes. They didn't talk much. There wasn't much to say. On Earth, a memorial was built on the ruins of New Bremen. It took 5 years to complete. 4,000 names were carved into black stone, arranged in the shape of a dome. Sarah Chen's name was placed first at the center of the memorial. Her parents attended the dedication ceremony but did not speak. They placed Mr. Hops, or what remained of him, in a case beneath her name. People came from across human space to visit the memorial. They left flowers and toys and small notes. Some came to mourn. Some came to remember. Some came to promise that it would never happen again. The galaxy changed after the war. Species that had been aggressive became cautious around human space. Pirates and raiders who once operated near Earth territory disappeared. When diplomatic disputes arose involving humanity, they were settled quickly and fairly. No one wanted another war. A year after the war ended, a junior intern at the Galactic Council named Melissa asked her supervisor a question. She was young, fresh out of university, full of idealism about peace and cooperation. Why don't we just force the humans to decommission their fleet? She asked. They're a danger to galactic peace. We have the numbers. If all the council species work together, we could make them. Her supervisor, an older woman named Chen, who had been at the council for 30 years, had watched the Battle of Kryn Nebula on the sensor logs. She had seen what those ancient weapons could do. She had stayed up at night doing the calculations, running the scenarios. She knew what would happen if anyone tried to forcefully disarm Earth. She simply shook her head. No, but why not? Chen pulled up a file on her terminal. It showed a picture of a little girl with braids holding a stuffed rabbit. Sarah Chen. No relation, but she had adopted the girl's name after the war. Many humans had. Because we finally understand, Chen said quietly, what HFY means. The intern looked confused. HFY? Humanity, fuck yeah. Chen closed the file. It means that humans are dangerous when peaceful and terrifying when provoked. It means they'll endure anything, but they never forget. It means they locked away their worst weapons not because they were weak, but because they were wise enough to fear what they could do. She looked at her young assistant. And it means that the one thing you never ever do is make them wake those weapons up. The intern thought about that. So we just let them keep the fleet? We let them keep the fleet, Chen confirmed. And we're grateful they're on our side. Because if they weren't, she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. High above Earth in the darkness of the Oort cloud, 847 warships waited. Their crews kept watch. Their weapons stayed ready. Their AIs ran endless simulations preparing for threats that might never come. Admiral Kodo had been right. Peace was precious, but some things were more precious still. Justice, protection, the promise that the innocent would not die while the galaxy looked away. The human fleet would make sure of it. They had learned their lesson. The galaxy had learned it too. And in the silence of space, if you listened carefully, you could almost hear the echo of a little girl's laughter, playing in gardens that no longer existed, holding a stuffed rabbit that had turned to ash. Sarah Chen was gone, but she would never be forgotten. The ships made sure of that. Every single day, in every quiet watch, in every moment of vigilance, they remembered. They remembered why they had awakened. They remembered what they fought for. They remembered a child who deserved better than the galaxy had given her, and they made sure that no other child would ever share her fate. That was the promise. That was the mission. That was why the fleet would never sleep again. Humanity, fuck yeah.